Yeah, perfect. I'm Andrew Reeves from University in Leicester in the UK, Riversore. And I think what I'm going to offer is building a little bit on the other two contributions we've had. So we've heard a little bit about how what a university does could link into teaching and learning activity or linking into research or kind of what is done on campus. And I'm going to talk a bit about the role we play working alongside other educational institutions and partners in our city to support learning and action on climate change. So it's really about a thing we've heard a few times during the day about the role of universities kind of within their local community setting and supporting activities there, whether that's about climate change or any other issue. Okay, let me just hopefully advance the slide. Brilliant. So just a little bit about Leicester, if you don't know about it.
That hasn't actually moved, Andrew.
Yeah, it might. There was a delay when we practiced, so it may come through.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All good.
Okay. So Leicester is, I guess, a medium to large size city in the UK, about 300,000 people. You may have heard of it because of our successful football team in recent years, or the discovery of a buried king in a car park. That's two recent claims to fame. But also, we've had long-standing commitments to sustainability and climate change from our local government. Most recently, our city council and our county council for the wider area both declared climate emergencies in 2019. This is a thing that happened a lot in the UK over the last few years in response to a lot of great work by campaigners. And following that, they have both been developing their climate change plans for the city and for the county. In the UK, we have a national target for net zero emissions by 2050 from our national government. In Leicester, the city's plans are aiming to be carbon neutral by 2030, which is in line with a lot of local authorities in the UK, which are being a bit more ambitious than the national target. And of course, the UK is hosting the COP26 climate talks this year. So this year, there's a big spotlight on what we are doing in this country about climate change. So that's our city. So the next slide is about my university, Montfort University. So we, over the last couple of years, have developed commitments around climate change, and this is very much building upon the guidance provided by EAUC. So the details of what went in our commitment is in the bottom right of the screen. But in terms of our emissions, our headline was aiming to be net zero for emissions under our direct control by 2032. That year was about our 5-year planning cycle. And for all emissions that we influence by 2045, which is a little ahead of the national target and based on the principle that as universities, we are very well placed to take a lead. So that was why we wanted to stretch that a little bit. But interestingly, the university wouldn't commit to that, the senior leaders, until they were confident there were actually actions that could back up those words. They didn't want to make a hollow commitment. So the dialogue we had about our climate change commitments actually led to much stronger commitments at university about what we were doing about sustainability more generally in our commitment to the Sustainable Development Goals and other issues. So what I'm going to focus on here are just two aspects of our commitments, really, which you can see in bold on the slide. So working with our local council and other local actors to support local climate action, and also delivering something called carbon literacy training. So I'm just going to share something about how we're doing that, which is really about what we're doing beyond the university in our local community. So the particular model of learning we've mostly been delivering is something called carbon literacy training. And this is an initiative that's been around in the UK for many years, comes from the city of Manchester. It's basically one day of very interactive learning in a group setting that has two main learning outcomes. So it's understanding the basics of climate change. So what is it? What are the causes of it? What is your carbon footprint individually or maybe as part of your organization? And then what can you do about it as an individual and collectively, which may be as part of your workplace, your university or groups you're part of. And it's a very empowering form of learning. We've delivered it internally within university to our staff and students, but we think it can have great impact more widely. And so we've been delivering that in partnership. So I'm just going to highlight some of these partnership approaches. So one of these is with local schools. So our local schools have an eco schools team to help schools in our city learn about environmental issues. So we worked with the City Council, we trained students at our university, along with students at the other university in the city, the University of Leicester. And those students, after having their training, they then went into local schools to deliver the training to the staff and to the students. And this is something we're going to be doing again in the coming year. So it's a lovely way of having collaboration locally, but also giving deeper learning for our university students, because they then get to have a wider impact. We also delivered this training to our local enterprise partnership, which is concerned with economic growth and development in our community. We delivered training to all of their staff this year and to some of their governors, and they're now making action on climate change part of what they do as an enterprise partnership. We think they're the first UK enterprise partnership to be officially accredited as carbon literate through this work. And that's leading on to work with training for businesses, small and large. In fact, one example of that over the last few months is the Enterprise Partnership ran a webinar series for small and medium enterprises on what they can do about renewable energy, about waste, about behaviour change, and so on. We also have kind of collaborative structures around our city and county. So there's something called the Experts Reference Group that brings together both universities, local councils and businesses, and formal arrangements. So we provided constructive feedback on the local climate change strategies. So what I'm trying to paint here is a picture of organizations working together across sectors. And this is to do with us being part of an RCE, a regional centre of expertise for education for sustainable development, which is all about that kind of cross-sectoral collaboration. And that's what I'm just touching upon on the next slide with a couple of images in a nutshell to sort of explain how that's working. So we've got the universities in the city, we've got the schools, we've got people in our local council who work with the schools, who work with business, we've got a business support agency, and also most recently we've got together with people delivering carbon literacy training for voluntary sector organisations as well. And the idea is by working together, we can reach all the different people in our community who need to be reached, who need to engage with this training in a way that works for them and decide what they are going to do about climate change to help meet the targets in our city. So we're reaching our own students, we're working with these partners, as I've mentioned, to reach local businesses. Our local government are delivering carbon literacy training internally themselves, but we plan to work together for the voluntary sector and others. So that's just a little picture of how we're doing it. So we're trying to be collaborative, we're trying to work together across sectors so that we can understand the learning needs and bring the useful expertise from where it's needed. So within the university, we have knowledge about renewable energy, about energy efficiency refurbishment, about behaviour change, and so on. So it's a really productive way to work. Some of the challenges around that is kind of scaling up. So we want to reach every sector, every organisation in the city, and we want to translate the learning and inspiration that comes from the training into people taking action, which requires extra resource, because once you've been fired up, you then want to know, well, great, what do I do? You know, what technology do I need to install to heat my building instead? How can I affordably change the travel behaviour for my business, and so on? So we need to provide that extra support as well, which is something we're working on next. So some of the things we are doing next, we've got various kind of funding proposals in place. So hopefully some of these will come together. We want to provide support to local voluntary sector organisations. We're working with our city council on that at the moment. There are going to be an online resource for local businesses. We hope to be working with particular sectors. So Leicester is famous for textile industries, so we want to work with them. We want to work with our healthcare providers, and also identify the large emitters in our community and see what we can do with them to look at their carbon footprint. And we're going to be continuing our collaborative work through a civic university agreements. This is just a thing I want to flag up that we're doing in Leicester, bringing together the two universities to look at challenges in the city. And one of our partnerships is going to be around environmental sustainability and really focused on climate change. So if you've not come across that idea, I recommend looking it up because it's a really powerful one. So that's just a little snapshot of what we're doing here in Leicester. Those are my suggested takeaways. This idea about supporting climate learning, working together across sectors, using carbon literacy training, and exploring civic university agreements. And if you want to explore any of this further with me, feel free to get in touch. My email is just there. Thank you very much.
Excellent. Wow, certainly doing an awful lot at Montfort University. Thank you for sharing with us. Question in the chat from Ian. Andrew, tell us about the impact of putting staff and students through climate literacy.
In short, I think there's something very powerful about giving people the time and space to explore this together. So people who've been working on these issues through their day job even, kind of leave going, you know what, I never knew that. You know, there are lots of kind of misperceptions about the carbon footprints. You know, people think about plastic waste as a big issue, which it is, but not in carbon terms, not compared to, you know, taking a long haul flight, for example, or certain dietary choices. So people tend to get fired up, motivated, and really learn about what has a big impact and what has a lesser impact. So it builds community and it builds understanding.
Right, okay. Ian, I think you have another question. Do you want to pose that one to Andrew?
Yeah, it's really inspirational, Andrew. Leicester continues to be inspirational. And I loved your cross-sector work. Has the pandemic increased the appetite for cross-sector work in the city, or has it damaged it? Has it changed people's minds about the needs to collaborate more, or not?
That's an interesting question. I can't think of an influence either way. In a way, I think the people who are passionate about it are now just meeting online. Feels that simple. I think maybe the challenge that I'm sure many people here have noticed is that, you know, you've got the momentum of your existing in-person relationships that carries you through meeting online, but I think there is something about meeting people in person. And so a lot of the people we're working with, we've been working with for many years, and so maybe there's a challenge about cementing those new partnerships that we're just working through now as we're trying to develop a new kind of wider partnership of all the different organizations delivering carbon literacy in the Leicester area. So we'll see how that goes. About how many people participate. I don't have numbers to hand. We've run it internally for staff, I think 5 times, and for students 4 times. So it's typically 20 to 30 people per session. And then externally, the enterprise partnership session was, I think, 20 to 30 staff. So it's, you know, a small, it's not, this isn't scaled up yet. Other institutions like Manchester Metropolitan in the UK have done this at a much larger scale. But I think maybe what is a little distinctive about what we're doing is this kind of collaborative approach between organizations.
If anyone is interested in the carbon literacy training and isn't familiar with it, if you can find some information on our website. The EAUC also run carbon literacy, and one of the nice things about that is that we quite often get a cross-section of the universities who come to our sessions, so there's quite a lot of knowledge sharing and information just between universities, so you can hear a lot about what's going on with other universities and things. So do check that out. We've got courses running every month for that as well.